This thing on? There we go. Good morning, everyone. We'll probably get started in about 5 minutes. So if you want to grab a coffee or a few tacos in your hand to come and take a seat with, that'd be great. And we'll kick off here in 5 minutes. All right. Sorry, that was a little loud. Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you for taking time on your Wednesday morning. I know there are probably many other things you could be doing at this time, but talking about automation is absolutely a priority for all of you, and I can see that. So we're excited to be here. First of all, I just wanted to thank the Capital Factory for hosting us. We've got a really strong partnership with them at Accenture, and excited to have them be ingrained in the community that many of us live and work in. And then also to our breakfast sponsor, Blue Prism, for providing the delicious food and breakfast taco. If you are not from Austin, there is an exciting debate as to where the breakfast taco was birthed. And if you are not familiar with that, I suggest you look it up. And there's only one answer, and it's a correct answer, and it's Austin. With that, we'll go ahead and kick off. So the topic for today is really focused on unleashing automation or intelligent automation across the enterprise. And you know, in multiple conversations with our local Austin team, as we're thinking through an exciting topic, what I am starting to see, at least, and I primarily focus in the healthcare market, is an influx of money, an influx of excitement around automation. And when you talk to a lot of enterprise customers or government entities about what they're doing, sometimes the stories don't necessarily translate, and it's been kind of a winding journey. And so what we wanted to spend some time doing, and really where I wanted to better understand as I started talking to a lot of my healthcare clients, was what are those stories? What have you learned? And where are you planning on going? And I think there's a lot of good learnings out of that. And so with that, that's really the focus of our conversation today. By way of introduction, my name's Ajay Modi. I'm a managing director within our health and public services practice, and primarily focused on technology consulting, and I'm one of our intelligent automation leaders in that space. And we'll talk a little bit more about Accenture's story and how we've really birthed and pushed for intelligent automation within our own organization to then be able to help our clients. And so to get started, there are a lot of terminology around automation and buzzwords. And so I wanted to spend a few minutes, probably about 10, 15 minutes before we call the panelists up, and level set some of those words to make sure we're all on the same page. You know, as we look at work that's occurred, there's a ton of manual work that exists today, and there always has been. And over the last 50, 60 years, there's been an advent of core systems, whether it be an ERP system that manages finance, HR functions, whether it be a claims system for a healthcare company, whether it be electronic medical record system, something that manages your P&L. And inherent to that, as we begin to structure a lot of the data, is automation that comes with it. And that has allowed tremendous amounts of efficiencies. And over the last 10 to 15 years, we're starting to see a handful of intelligent automation that really sits on top of and interacts with a lot of these core systems. Now, a lot of them can be more rules-based, where it's very focused and codified in terms of steps that need to be taken, or more AI-based or being able to traverse through unstructured data. And so as we look at the segmentation of both of those, to date, a lot of them interact with, whether kicked off by a human or not, with those core systems. Now, over time, I think we're going to start to see more and more intelligence built into a lot of the core platforms, whether it be an Oracle platform, an Epic platform, and we're starting to see a lot of push in that space, especially with some of the recent announcements like the virtual assistants by Salesforce. But for the time being, that's really the segmentation of the market that we see. If we look at the last row on the slide, which I love to point clients to, and I heard John, one of our panelists, actually just speaking to someone earlier about the same thing. At the end of the day, it's all about the process. So regardless of what type of world we're living in, whether you're automating something with a core system, or whether you are using process engineering, or whether you are leveraging some sort of intelligent automation technique, it's all about the process. And being able to understand that, and then being able to model that out in whatever tool or technology you choose to, is where a lot of our clients at Accenture that we see have some hurdles. And so as we have a conversation about technology and we have a conversation about intelligent automation, keeping the process front and center is absolutely important. So a lot of buzzwords. This is Accenture's view and just how we structure and organize intelligent automation. And in the bottom left corner of the slide, you'll see foundation automation, which many of you are well familiar with, have used in your organizations. It's your batch programs, your scripts, macros, a lot of quick things that exist today. We have seen an emergence moving further up the chain of robotic desktop or robotic process automation tools. And I've had the opportunity to be at several conferences to talk about intelligent automation. I saw an interesting dialogue of what's really the difference. And to me, it's summed up by one simple thing. The speed to delivery and the ability to govern a lot of the automations with these new tool sets becomes a lot easier. And there's three primary drivers of that. The first one is a lot of these are focused on the process. So a lot of the tools and platforms have a Visio-like front end where developers are building processes and managing the technology that's underlying to that process. The second thing is the error handling. It's phenomenal. With some of the traditional scripts, you get a pop-up when you're running a bunch of batch scripts overnight, and the whole process stops. With some of the platforms like Blue Prism, Pega, UiPath, Automation Anywhere, they have the ability to traverse through them and provide some intelligence to figure out what to do next. And then the third thing is, in the world that we live in where there's a lot of object-oriented programming, especially when you go to a web browser, for example, and you type in your name or your address, Google Chrome or Internet Explorer is able to easily tell what should go in what field. And a lot of these platforms have the ability to interrogate that this is the name field, and whether it moves from the bottom left to the bottom right of the screen, it really doesn't matter because the technologies are able to understand and interrogate that particular object on the screen. And so most of these are very platform-focused software automations. And as we've seen an influx in data, in sensors, and really analytics, we're then able to move further up the chain to be able to do predictive modeling. And with that, there's a lot of platforms. Some of them, like in every household, Alexa today, you're able to speak to it. It's able to use natural language processing to understand what you're saying, and then drive to a particular outcome. And we've seen a lot of movement in that space, primarily driven because of the influx of data and the ability to understand what that data is telling us. Moving further up the chain, we start to get into the learning aspect of things. And with machine learning, a lot of the platforms and partners today are not only able to guide us to an answer or give us an answer, but then be able to intelligently take that feedback back, depending on whether it was the correct or incorrect answer, and then continue to learn off of that. And at Accenture, we use what we call the Sense, Comprehend, Act, and Learn model. And at the bottom of the slide, which is probably very hard to see, it's just a navigation of how we see that increasing. And over time, I think we are beginning to up our game more and more in the act space, more and more in the sense and comprehend space, and the learning capabilities are getting better and better. We're starting to see a convergence. For example, you'll hear a little bit later today with some of our, for example, RPA platforms partnering very closely with some of the machine learning capabilities that are out there to then be able to have one unified platform across the board. So that's our world of automation and how we define it. So as we kicked off today, automation is a hot topic. It's buzzing. There's a few factoids up there and headlines just in terms of what the spend is, how many executives feel automation is core to their strategy, and really where the workforce is going. Now, it isn't all motherhood and apple pie, as one of my mentors would say, but it's not that easy. We have seen a lot of hurdles. Nearly 30 to 60% of RPA projects, according to EY study, fails, and 50 to 60% are generally not on time. And while those particular headlines are focused on RPA, which is primarily where we wanted to drive the conversation today, as we move further up the spectrum in terms of intelligent automation, the headlines only exacerbate, with cognitive learning being a lot more difficult for really enterprises to harness and master. And so whether you work at an enterprise, whether you're part of a startup, whether you're part of a government agency, we're seeing a lack of understanding of how to navigate these conversations. And particularly the hurdle headlines I chose, you'll notice, are from some of our competitors, not because I didn't want to put up Accenture's own headlines in the space, but we don't have a ton of industry depth there. But I do think in the market, Accenture's journey has positioned us well to be able to support our clients in this space. And in the spirit of sharing journeys, before we bring up our panelists, I wanted to spend a few minutes just talking about Accenture's journey. As many of you know, we are a professional services company, and we've always had 3 or 4 business segments where we focus on defining strategy in particular industries and at the intersection of business and technology that shape how organizations work. We have our consulting organization that helps transform and drive to particular outcomes. And then we've always had at the bottom of the slide, technology support and delivery, where it's core and bread and butter to what we do in terms of being able to serve our clients, as well as operations, where we run a lot of our clients' operations. Now, in 2014, we made a conscious decision to create a business unit that was focused specifically on digital. And as we spun out this organization called Accenture Digital, we realized that a lot of things, and automation was one of them, really have to be at the forefront of our conversations. And so we talk as a firm about being digitally led, and that is really true. So whether it be a consumer experience trend, or whether it be a design trend with some of our recent acquisitions like Fjord, it really permeates through the rest of the organization. And the same is true of intelligent automation. So when we talk about AI, when we talk about RPA, a lot of the conversations we had were digitally led, and we were first to market to better understand that. And then we began to train folks like myself, who sit in the consulting organization, specifically focused on healthcare, to then go find specific use cases where we want to spend some time leveraging what we've learned and where we think the market's going. So I think that's positioned us really well, and I also think it's, in spirit of sharing stories, one of the better stories out there in terms of how an organization should navigate intelligent automation. And so with that, I will call up our panelists, and I just realized I have lost my note cards. Give me 1 second. Well, back pocket. There we go. I do know Danny, so I probably could have done this by heart. So Danny is a Senior Director of Reporting and Analytics at Kaiser Permanente's health plan. And if you guys want to walk up and kind of sit down as I'm introducing you, that'd be great. And I'll let him talk about his story in a little bit. Danny lives in Oakland, California, enjoys running, cycling, going to concerts, and rooting for the Oakland A's. Lauren Sturm is currently manager of automation and digital solutions within the Houston Financial Services Center of Chevron. Lauren is responsible for managing all RPA, process improvement and optimization, Lean Sigma projects for the center. She's married to her husband Brandon for 15 years and has 2 boys, Seth and Shane. And John Thurkoff, did I say that correctly? Who apparently his friends call him Jet, so I will probably be using that, is a former managing director and head of performance excellence at Bank of New York Mellon. John was responsible for the company's re-engineering efforts, robotics, and intelligent automation initiatives. John founded the Improve and Innovate company and is currently chief customer officer at one of our vendors, Blue Prism. And for fun, John joined his college team and played in the 40th anniversary rugby match and completed his training as a certified shark feeder. Man of mystery. I still have arms, legs, and fingers. So thank you all once again for being here and taking time out of your schedule. Excited to have a conversation. I think as we prepared for some of the dialogue back and forth, I think what I found interesting is the truth of it is everyone's got a very unique story, and their organizations do too. And so in the spirit of that, why don't we kick off? And Danny, do you want to tell us a little bit more about your background and really, I guess, Kaiser's story?
Sure, yeah. I'll make sure we'll start with that. I know Kaiser Permanente isn't necessarily a Texas company. We were actually briefly here in, I think, Dallas area, but we're a vertically integrated HMO. So we have both, we have a health plan, a hospital system, as well as, an exclusive provider network. And we have about 12 million members across 8 states and in the District of Columbia. So, and we're really, 75% of our membership is in California, and that's really where we've, grown out of. So kind of the shipyards of World War II. So Henry J. Kaiser was kind of an industrialist, and so anyway, kind of this was his one of his last, I think, remaining business. Really, there's maybe some sand and gravel businesses out there in California, but anyway, so a little context there of what Kaiser Permanente is. I joined Kaiser Permanente 13 years ago right out of college, and actually had a degree in computer engineering, and joined our IT organization and was there for 3 years implementing our electronic medical record, and kind of quickly realized I had more of a passion for process improvement, and only so much you can do in the IT organization, right? People are coming to you with ideas, and I wanted to be kind of more driving the idea. So I joined our business, started doing process improvement. I'm a Lean Six Sigma black belt, so, don't know any karate, but I can improve your processes. And there I was actually able to really get into data analytics and use a lot of what I learned in computer engineering to, get at the data, write SQL code, and then eventually get into more fun stuff like writing code in R and doing more predictive analytics. And that really has been an interesting journey in terms of getting to this automation space because it's really, as Jay was saying about the intelligent automation, being able to combine those skills with data analytics and then giving the output of a predictive model or some data mining you did to a bot, you can actually start to affect some change. It's not just like, here's an output of a spreadsheet, you give it to an operations person, then they still have to go do it. You can actually give it to a bot and kind of get your results instantaneously. So that's kind of my journey of how I got here. That's it.
Awesome. Lauren, do you want to tell us a little bit about your story and how you ended up in the automation space?
Sure. So my name's Lauren. I'm at Chevron, an integrated oil company worldwide. I'm sure everybody's heard of it. I've been with Chevron for 15 years. I hired on to Unical Corporation actually out of college, and then Chevron acquired them about 13 years ago. So I've graduated with a finance degree. So I was in the accounting and finance space for most of the time that I've been with Chevron, mainly in the midstream area actually. In the past few years, I joined the finance shared services about 5 years ago. And in that area, we're doing a lot of manual processes, a lot of keying in individual items. We have many FTEs in this space that are doing repetitive processes. So a couple of years ago, my leadership decided to start looking at the automation. And at that time was really when multiple groups within Chevron started to look at automation. And organically, we had about 3 or 4 groups within the corporation that started to really look into it. We started some proof of concepts in a few different places. My group was one of them. We did contract with Accenture to help us out with that. And for our specific organization, we had about 160 full-time employees, 77 of which were impacted by the process we looked at. Because my boss, my president, said, you know what, we're going to pick the hardest process we got and then see if it works. And if that works, we can do anything. So it was a pretty risky way to go about it. The other groups that did the proof of concepts chose much more straightforward processes. But we didn't fail. It actually was successful. With Accenture's help, we made it through the first implementation. We continued to grow. So we started that at about August last year and finished the first implementation in March of this year. As we've continued to implement across those people, it's become obvious that there's a lot of things we had to learn. So my team is only a few people, and they're all finance professionals. One of them is pretty focused on coding. So we've learned that you can find people that are focused on process improvement in any place in the organization. So these people found that they may have gotten their finance and accounting degree, but they're really much more interested in projects and processes and possibly coding. One of them is a coder. So this year, we've continued to develop and be able to identify different processes within our shared services across Manila and Buenos Aires, different locations. We're able to roll out the processes we've implemented. But much more, just like you pointed out, we've discovered it's much more about the process. It's more about standardizing what's being done. If everyone is doing the same thing that results in the same answer, we need to be doing it the same way. Otherwise, we can't automate it. So that's really where we've gotten to. There's a lot, I think, to learn and a lot of journey to go. But yeah, Chevron, I mentioned the organic ones that had grown. There's many organizations within Chevron that are now using automation. We have a whole group. It's being owned by the IT department specifically, but the most of our projects that are really making big impacts are in the finance shared services organizations.
Awesome. And John, could you tell us a little bit about your story and your new role within Blue Prism?
Sure, thanks. So I have a traditional technology background. I'm a psychologist by training, just like every technologist. But when I graduated school, I did what every technologist does, start their own consulting business at 25, because that's what we do, because we know everything. And for about 8 years, I consulted in steel, auto, chemical, and paper. Basically, before the days of Six Sigma were around, I was using statistical process control and setting up standard systems for the big industries, and did that for a number of years. Then I decided in my early 30s that I have no corporate experience and I have no idea how to navigate inside of these major corporations. So I started working for MCI Telecom, if anybody remembers MCI Telecom. Bill McGowan was a very innovative guy. He destroyed AT&T and broke up and then started the revolution of breaking up basically all the monopolies in the world with telecom. So I had a great upbringing in that, and then went to work for GE under Jack Welch. So I had another interesting mentor at the time. So I became the first master black belt class in GE and did all those wonderful things. So my career stayed in financial services, and about 7 years ago, I started playing around with RPA products while I was in Russia working, and needed a little bit of a break after working in Russia for 3 years. Was down in New Zealand working for a small company there, and then got a phone call and was recruited to come back to Bank of New York Mellon, where I was actually able to, I was head of transformation for the entire bank, and I had re-engineering under my belt. I ran all the offshoring, cost management, and one of my 5 levers for transformation was automation. And I was an AA guy at the time, and I thought, oh, we're going to choose AA, but I was open about it, and I said, well, let's run a horse race. So we invited the 3 biggies, UiPath, Blue Prism, and AA, and only 2 horses showed up, and that was AA and Blue Prism. And we ran the horse race, and I let my gigantic team of 3 people manage and run the horse race. And we gave them 5 processes, ran it, 132 criteria to make the decision, and Blue Prism won, to my surprise, by the way. And since that time, the bank has implemented about 350 digital workers into the workforce. They're all named Alex. If anybody knows anything about Bank of New York Mellon, anybody know who our founder was? Last name would be Hamilton, the guy that musical is written about that's very famous. So Alexander Hamilton was our founder. Boni is the oldest bank in the United States. So we thought he was pretty innovative in and of himself, so we named all of our robots after Alex. We have version 1, which is Alex, and we have Alex 2.0. Alex 2.0 is our intelligent robot. Alex 2.0 has eyes, and he also now has a semblance of a left-hand side of his brain. He's never going to be a psychologist like his founder and his father, but you know, we're not yet thinking about feelings and those kind of things for our robots. But
this is getting weird.
Yeah. Well, Ajay, you told me to be controversial, so. But in all honesty, the way that we look at it at Boni, and I left there in February, was that it's not a tool for us. It's really a digital worker. And so when you think about it in that way, we had to construct an environment, and we had to construct management systems for digital workers. And what was work going to look like, and how do you have systems, HR and everything else, to work when you have digital workers. So just like you have different skill sets and different competencies for humans, we have the same thing for our digital workforce. So they're working on projects right now that can affect, I've calculated yesterday for another conference I'm speaking at, a project that's going to free up 800,000 hours back to the process owner, with Alex 2.0 and with a new version that he's rolling out. So it's a very interesting way forward. It's a very mature organization with this right now, and the team constantly continues to evolve. And I think that's what can happen when you really think about things differently and you move away from it's a tool and really think about it as you're building a digital worker.
So Danny, I don't think healthcare is quite in the state that John described. Do you want to talk a little bit about Kaisers' vision and where you think Kaiser is kind of in that trajectory?
Yeah. Yeah, we're definitely not where the financial services organizations are. I mean, healthcare, I think, is just getting started. I mean, obviously, you know, our processes are a lot more sensitive. We're dealing, you know, I mean, financial information is sensitive. We're probably the second most regulated organization behind financial industries. But, you know, we make a lot of excuses why we shouldn't do things. But, you know, but it's patient information, right? And it's PHI, and there's HIPAA and all sorts of regulations that we have to adhere to. So we've been very sensitive and kind of taking a slow dip into, you know, into this pool of intelligent automation. And we've had, within our team, I'm within the health plan organization. I forgot to mention that. On the administrative side, which is about 6,000 employees. We probably have about, I think, 50 kind of FTE worth of savings right now. I don't know how many bots that really translates to in our membership administration area and our claims area. And so, but we know that's, we're at the tip of the iceberg, right? So we have projects going on right now to evaluate all areas within our health plan. I think we've identified, at least in claims, I think for the next year, another, 30 or 40, and we're going through the process of identifying, through all of our areas. With 6,000 employees, there's probably a lot of opportunity, but a lot of our processes are really complex. Benefits, interpretations within a health plan are extremely difficult to understand, but we actually are working on a project right now to do that, to actually look at the benefits that were sold and actually automate. Well, I knew it was going to fall. Need cup holders on these things. I thought this was Texas. But anyway, so so we're in this process of evaluating, all of our areas, but they are extremely complex, right? I mean, if you deny a claim inappropriately, you're going to get a call from the DOI, right, saying, why did you deny this claim? So we have to be really, really sure when we have our bots do things that they're making the right decisions. And we're learning a lot about processes not being written down and a lot of stuff being between people's two ears, right? So that's always fun. But it's been a good journey. We've partnered with Accenture that kind of got us bootstrapped and going on this, and now have a team of about 5 or 6 people who do this full time now, and continue to add folks to the space. So.
Yeah, and when you guys started, so how did you interact with the Center of Excellence? I know you're driving towards some of that right now, but enterprise-wide, since Kaiser, to your point, is both health plan as well as care delivery, right, with a lot of the clinical delivery centers that you own. How did that journey start, and could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, so we did have a Center of Excellence. It's an enterprise-wide Center of Excellence. It's under our CFO. So it started there, and they really had kind of a vision of how they wanted to roll out RPA, right? And they were doing a lot of the heavy lifting for us, making the relationships within our IT organization, selecting vendor. We use Prism. And they did a lot of that kind of, I'd say, that pre-work for us, and helped us get there. I think it was a good start, but I think what we realized is Kaiser's so big and so intricate, and our processes and systems are so complex that we've started to, we're going to work with that Center of Excellence, but we're actually creating our own Center of Excellence within the health plan that can kind of standardize processes and create some more consistency in approaches. Just because our senior vice president has a vision of what he wants to see us report out, and how we're calculating savings, or our processes or policies, procedures to be consistent. And as much as you want those to be consistent across the entire enterprise, it's kind of difficult. The wheels move a little too slow when you have somebody at the enterprise level. So
and you're tied very closely to the operations, right? And
right.
So that makes, in your opinion, probably somewhat of a difference. Or do you think if you guys went back, would you have done it the same way, where it starts out more enterprise-wide?
Well, it's funny because we've actually had bots, not intelligent bots, in our organization for the last 10 years. So we had old claim systems that didn't have any automation, so auto adjudication, and we are now on a standard, platform, and we have, really high auto adjudication or automation in our core system, kind of relating back to your slide. But before we didn't, so we had a lot of macros going in to the tune of 30-40% of the work that we were doing was just kind of screen scraping and emulation. So, and that was like, we built our own software to do that. So it was funny when this shared service showed up. We were kind of like, oh wow, well, we've been doing this for a decade, so we actually could probably teach you guys a thing or two about how to go about automation. So I think if we could go back in time, yeah, I think if we would have been the ones driving it, it probably would have been a little easier. But at the same time, I don't want to. I think it also brought it more into the public in terms of. Everybody kind of learning at the same time about, ensuring we're adhering to SOX standards and, we're being compliant. And they did do a lot of heavy lifting in terms of getting, bot IDs created for us and things like that. So it was a little bit more transparent. So, pros and cons.
Awesome. And so, Lauren, as we look at Chevron's experience and where you started, I think you were alluding to the fact that it was more technology driven and then finding different areas, and finance happened to be one of them. But could you speak a little bit about that journey and where Chevron plans on going with it?
So I was talking about the proof of concepts, and we did start one of them in finance. It continued to grow. It's continuing to grow within the finance organizations. And Chevron itself, we started with the smaller groups, and over the past year, they've grown into have the Center of Excellence at the corporate level where we evaluate all of our projects. I think as it continues to grow, our IT organization is going to own the licensing within the organization, the ownership of the project management and evaluating projects. They're going to continue to roll that out. But as we have found, similar to Danny's story, within the individual organizations, each of them have their own smaller center of excellence that is attacking the small projects, the ones that we know we can do in a quick manner and code them and put them right into service, and we don't need the huge infrastructure, the servers set up, et cetera, things like that. So Chevron itself is setting up a larger network where we're using UiPath, and they're setting up that network where they can hand out the licenses within the corporation to our different business units. But within each of those business units, that knowledge is being built. The capability is being built within those individuals. And we've already seen this past hiring cycle, our internal hiring cycle, we've already seen positions showing up that are specifically related to digital technologies, digital automations, RPA abilities. So that it's really growing within the corporation.
So, John, you've heard Danny and Lauren's story. What do you hear the most? Business-led, IT-led? Where is the best place for automation to live?
Well, our story at Boni was completely the opposite. So, and again, what we're seeing, depending upon where they are in a maturity cycle, it's the old story again. It depends. Statistically, we know that organizations that go federated early have a less likelihood of meeting their set standards and objectives. We've already seen that. We've been tracking that at least through our client base. We also know that most of the initiatives and the early initiatives that we've been tracking start out in the business, so they're business-led and IT supported, and that's been a Blue Prism mantra. So that's been consistently working. At Boni, we started out very centralized. We were, because of my own understanding of transformation, I have a belief, and still do, that it's very difficult to maintain consistency and standards with having multiple people that you're trying to affect change with, trying to all learn at the same time, and even major organizations. So I always think about kids. When I have my kids and they're little, it's like when I first time I felt comfortable enough to let them out in the backyard or let them out of the house to go out and play, I didn't just say, well, you can go play anywhere in the neighborhood, because they would have just been like running around crazy monkeys, and I would have never found them again. They had to go play in the backyard, and that was it. And then after I trusted them enough, they could go play a little bit in the neighbor's yard and further out and further out and further out. So when we had our COE, we built the COE from the start, and we had dedicated teams that were then assigned to each of the divisions within our organization. And so the divisions felt like they had their own teams, but they still reported into the COE. And the re-engineering team that I owned as well was done the same way. So they were owned by me, but they were assigned into the divisions because I can control everything. until the divisions actually matured enough to understand what is this stuff. Because if I just turned them loose, my fear was, and I've seen this happen too many times in my career, they would just get resources and not have a clue about what to do with them. And they would frivol away the resources that they had. And this is what we actually see happen in a lot of organizations that go federated, because there's not enough competency within the organization to drive that permeation around. So it's very difficult to keep that competency at a level that's going to be able to scale up. And so we've always believed that concentrate it early and then spread out as you gain the bandwidth, both depth and breadth. And so this year, which is going to be entering year 4, they're actually going federated for the first time. So they take the competencies with the library of objects that they've built up, and the resources now will be divided and given to the divisions. But that's 3.5 years that the businesses now have had an opportunity to understand how to use the technology, how to interface with people, but the COE will still exist because they'll run the control room. Because we have a very sophisticated control room because they're digital workers, so they're fungible resources that can move around and be assigned to different people. So we still think in Blue Prism terms that it should be owned and managed by the business, but governed by IT. And we had a great partnership with our IT organization. So, and I think it's you can't do any. Why would a business ever want to own the cloud infrastructure? That's ridiculous, right? Or I never want to own the credential vault for my IDs or any of that stuff, because that's way too risky for those kind of things. So there needs to be that symbiotic relationship with your technology folks to make this thing really work well.
Yeah, and Lauren, how does that balance work at Chevron, and do you see that changing based on what you described earlier?
Probably not. I think what Chevron has the direction they really started going, it's going to continue that way. And like what John was saying, the IT is really leading the charge. They are owning the process. They're owning the servers, the infrastructure. They are telling each business unit how how to do it, getting them set up in those spaces, the IDs, etc. They're leaving the business units themselves to own the process. And so it's really, whenever we are creating these teams within each business unit, we are using a model. An IT person is in that, a RPA analyst is being used, someone from the business unit that understands the process is being added to the team. And so whenever there's a process that is identified as a good candidate, we create a team from the Center of Excellence and the business unit to go in and really execute that RPA in that space.
And what's been your delivery time frame for simple, and maybe give us an example of a simple process or one that's more complex, and what does that look like?
Yeah, the delivery timeframes are vastly different. So for an example, within my business unit, we book production and revenue accounting, and we had to rebuild 100,000 networks, which can take 8 people about 6 months of full-time work. So that team came to my RPA team and said, hey, this is what needs to happen. We need to click this many buttons. What do you need? And basically our finance person who thinks in the IT world said, I need this format, just give it to me, and then we'll get it posted. And so he was able to deliver in less than 24 hours. But we're also seeing projects like our bigger project that is impacting more of the organization is still in the over 1 year time frame. So it really is, the time frame delivery is more being impacted by whether the process was ready to automate, how much standardization is still required, how many people it's impacting. The change management is a huge portion of what our delivery time is. What we are seeing in our monthly close process, we started out fast, and the change management started to push back. The organization started pushing back on the implementation because the first question I'm sure many of you have heard is, oh my goodness, this robot's gonna take my job. So we really had to squelch the fears with the technology. We had to assure the employees that we weren't doing this to try and take their jobs. Obviously, we've reduced headcount because of it, but it wasn't a goal at the time whenever we were first starting. So just the number of people it's impacting, the standardization of the process, and all of that impacts how much the delivery is.
Yeah, and Danny, to some of probably your experiences with delivery timeframes, and also you operate in a very unique environment, Kaiser, with tremendous labor partners. How do you find the balance of the educational curve that Lauren was talking about?
Around educating people
What is
about
RPA?
oh yeah,
what the
it's
impact
actually
is, what that looks like.
yeah. I mean, I think that people have been really excited about the bots. They actually we call our bot Rosie, just Rosie the Riveter and the robot. So there's a little duality there, but. She so we've kind of we've talked to our we work in a, like Jay mentioned, it's a labor environment, and they actually like Rosie because Rosie takes away the repetitive work and the boring work, they call it, and they like to to think about processing a claim and getting through and doing the actual adjudication, looking up benefits, or kind of that complex research that's actually engaging, not just I have to copy and paste this into a web browser to do the pricing. So they look forward to that, and we also are trying to kind of move to more being kind of more consumer focused in our processes. So we're actually redeploying people to work on kind of higher value added work and kind of getting people working at the top of their license. And so that's been really exciting for folks too, as we've gotten rid of this repetitive work. We've redeployed people to actually, work more on, say, a member reimbursement that's coming in, for handling that, being kind of like a case worker with them, explaining to the member what's going on, why it's taking so long to get their money back, reassuring them. So it's been well received by our teams and our unions, and yeah, so.
And what do you think success looks like for your portion of the organization, and then broadly for Kaiser with automation?
I think success, I mean, I don't think that, there's some North Star that says everything's automated, right? I don't think that we're ever going to, get to that point. But I think that, if we were to say, I don't know. I don't think there's like some magic number, but I think if you could kind of go in and see that in all of our areas we're utilizing, the bots to enable a better customer experience, and we're able to, kind of move. I don't know if people study, where industries are in terms of like customer satisfaction, but healthcare, Kaiser is the best, but if you look at us across industries, we're just a little bit better than cable companies. So sorry if anybody here from Time Warner or anything else, but I mean, fast food chains are better than us. Everybody's better than us. So we always kind of joke that we're the best of the worst. So I think for Kaiser to actually start moving up that chain and seeing our consumer experience, and that we're able to redeploy people to work more on customer satisfaction. So.
Great. So I have a question, Lauren, since you're from Texas. We have at the Capital Factory, there's a lot of startups, entrepreneurs here. How do you at Chevron evaluate new tools, new startups, new technologies? Let's say they wanted to come show you a cool thing at the Financial Shared Service Center in Houston. How does that work? And if you could describe a little bit of the process and sort of the evaluation, specifically in the lens of automation, right?
So it really is a new area. Just the fact that Chevron is being open to using new technology in this space. I know that we're, as an industry, behind generally healthcare and banking. So Chevron is just getting to this place where they are open to the new technologies that are being rolled out. So I think that they are starting, our IT groups are looking at those, but I know that internal to our shared services, my IT guy who is interested in it is reaching out. Every time something new comes out, we're looking at how it is impacting, how well it works. But for Chevron, it's a big corporation, so honestly, we can't really start grabbing those softwares until they're approved by all the right people, I guess is the best way to put it. So as new things come online, I think the best question is, how does it relate to what we're already using? What can it do differently or better than what we are using? And would it be easier to implement, easier to access, easier to interface with? Those are really the questions that we've seen being asked so far about new and emerging technologies.
Great. And on that same vein, John, I know Blue Prism, just came out with their digital exchange. You've got a lot of AI partners that you're starting to work with. Where do you think specifically the RPA market's going, and how do you interact with some of the best and upcoming tools that are available in the market?
Well, again, I think our company is evolving. We have to, because I think the customers are expecting more than just digital fingers on a keyboard. Alex couldn't just sit there and be fingers on a keyboard. Alex needed eyes. Alex needed left brain capabilities, maybe right brain capabilities at some point down the road, but definitely needed those cognitive capabilities. He needs to learn how to hear. He needs to learn how to speak. So, the digital exchange, for those of you that are not Blue Prism users, you're more than welcome to go on our site and learn about the digital exchange. Basically, it's our platform for bringing on new technologies that can interface with our RPA system. And it really is a platform. We think about it as a way that you can build your intelligent automation and your intelligent workforce onto it. And it's the base platform by which. So, easy way to think about it, it's your phone, by the way, which very few people actually use as a phone anymore, and we use it for everything else. Well, that's basically what our Blue Prism platform is evolving to now. So we're bringing in a lot more intelligent automation partners so that we can use their technology to help make your jobs and your company's digital workers better and better and better. So there's a lot of very cool features that are coming in, and some of our new releases that are coming out, you'll see things like, for those of you who are users, 6.4 and 7.0 that'll be coming out mid-year next year. There's to be some awesome new features with cognitive drag and drop features that you can access directly from Google and places like that you can actually start doing things along those lines. So it's just moving so fast. It's amazing. It's why I reinvented myself 7 years ago, sitting in Russia thinking, what the hell am I going to do with myself? But again, it's just something that everybody's going to see moving, and the pace by which it's coming. Every month we're seeing somebody new come up with this neat little niche little thing that we have to sit and try to evaluate to figure out, is it, do we put it into the system? Does it bring value to the clients? Does it make things better for people? And it's a tough challenge because not everything will be. And it's going through all the testing and making sure that it's bulletproof. So it's great for you all who are users. And for those of you who aren't users, you might be someday very soon.
And I'm going to have you guys play hot potato with the mic over to Danny. On the AI thread, Danny, as John mentioned, Blue Prism as a product is pushing that front. As an enterprise, how do you react to that, and what's Kaiser Health Plan specifically strategy around AI? How are you looking at tools? How do you evaluate when you've got a partner that you guys use Blue Prism today, as you said earlier, has a new release, and what capabilities they have? Can you speak a little bit about that?
Well, I mean, I'm trying to remember what version we're on. It's got everything has to go through our technology risk office to, we get new software. So a little bit, I mean, just to point on the new software entrepreneur point. As I think there's no real front door at a lot of organizations, but connect with people on LinkedIn. Talk to folks about your software. But I think that is the biggest barrier, and is being a trusted partner. So sorry, just an aside on that.
No, sorry.
No,
I skipped you.
So repeat what you were saying again. I'm
So
sorry.
I think, so on the same thread of, moving up the curve to AI, and you touched on partners, and thank you for doing that, because I know that's front and center to Kaiser's strategy.
Yeah.
But how do you evaluate when an existing partner has an upgrade, and then what's your overall AI strategy at Kaiser?
Yeah, I mean, I'll start with the the AI strategy. I mean, we're definitely investing in that space. I mean, my team is currently working on some predictive models. We're starting really slow with some text analytics. We're SaaS users, so we're leveraging SaaS to kind of quickly evaluate some ways that we can mine text and actually make some decisions on it. And so we're doing a lot of our AI kind of outside right now, and then feeding it to the bots. So we kind of crunch things in SaaS, load it into a database, and then that the bots kind of follow that. So I think it's encouraging to hear, and I was at Blue Prism World earlier this year when they announced all the cool stuff that's going to get integrated in. So I think it will be, obviously you go down a path, it'll be hard to kind of shift and adopt what's going on there, but I just see it as another tool in the tool belt, right? And maybe we're on SaaS now, but in a few years we kind of move over to some of the other tools. I think just, again, what makes it challenging is just, our technology risk organization is going to want to go look at that and kind of go, well, is it really buttoned up, and are we certified for the Google Cloud, and what is Google going to see, right? Because we can't upload PHI to Google's cloud if it's not protected. If they're even taking metadata or anything like that, there's going to be issues happening. So.
Yeah, in Chevron's world, what's their AI strategy, and what does that look like?
So we haven't really gotten into the AI space yet. We definitely have it on the horizon to evaluate, but I was asking some questions just to see if they had touched it yet. We're really just we're really moving into OCR, and that is as close as we've gotten. And I know that's not really very far, but for AI, there's just a lot of risk, and Chevron's a very risk-averse company, and so they're gonna take their time looking at this type of technology.
And do you see a lot of that managed by the COE that you mentioned enterprise-wide, Lauren, or is that a separate portion of the organization as you start to talk about AI and other forms of intelligence?
It's probably going to start with the Center of Excellence. They're probably going to be the ones that'll make those decisions at first. We will probably internally look at these opportunities, but overall, the Center of Excellence is going to be the ones that make the decision as to whether Chevron can start into that technology.
Okay. So I want to open it up to the panelists as well. Do you have any other questions for each other before we kind of ask the the floor? Because in the spirit of sharing journeys, I think it's important to be able to get some of the questions out. And John, maybe I'll pick on you since you've got a Blue Prism advocate here and one that's eager to explore.
Well, I think for both Lauren and our Blue Prism advocates sitting on the other end as well, when you guys are looking at the challenges that you're sitting with today, and Lauren, you were talking about OCR, which is again the first thing that we got into because we realized bots don't deal well with unstructured data. So you have to do some data capturing and get the data structured. And I did a survey of about 350 companies, and 80% of the respondents said 78% of the data they have or greater was unstructured. Well, that wipes out a great proportion of what they're going to try to automate without a data capturing, structuring engine doing something before you even hand it off to, no matter if it's UI, AA, doesn't matter. Nobody can deal with it. There's nothing there to do it. So you're conquering that. What's the next thing that you see? So if you look at process automation, and kind of the way we measured it, it was like 20 to 30% is what you can do with the way the current processes are set up and given the data quality that you have. So you knock it out now with OCR, that ups that probably to 50 to 60% of what we found in our studies. What's the next thing you think you have to bolt on to get that up to like 75% automatable? What do you think? And Danny, to you guys as well.
That's probably going to have to get into that AI space. Just the analysis part is what's left on the analyst, the people that we've looked at, their desks. So just making those decisions, the comparisons, the variances, just bringing it to that next step where it actually captures the entire package of what they're doing. We're also going to be using the OCR for our contracts and our land departments. That's really the goal of those in that space, is to get those contracts digitized, to be able to understand them and read them with the bot, not necessarily with the humans having to do that. So that's where we're going with that.
Jay, hey, we got a process variation here with the J. I think from that last, whatever it is, 30, 40%, I think it's going to take a lot of computer-assisted input, and I think what we're going to have to do is kind of make a recommendation to a human saying we think we should go this way, left or right, and get that feedback and actually start training the bots and the predictive models that way. I think where the challenge is always going to be this kind of analogy I always use. It's like self-driving cars. People want self-driving cars to be 100% safe, right? They're like, well, there can't be any fatalities, there's no car accidents, but it's going to happen, right? There's an inevitable situation that's going to come up where a car is going to have to make a decision. It's like there's two unavoidable things. You're going to hit this car, you're going to hit that car, or hit this person, right? And people are really uncomfortable with the computer making that decision, but they're super comfortable with people making that decision, even though we've proven that, you know, the self-driving cars are actually better drivers than we are, right? So it gets into this whole weird ethics debate. And it's like we like to be able to blame a person to say, well, you know, Susie paid the claim wrong. So it's like, all right, it goes against her. As opposed to, well, the bot did it. Then it's like, well, what if the bot pays all the claims wrong, and then everything, and then the whole company goes out of business, and you're like, well, hold on, like we've already proven that they have like a 99.9% success rate, so that 0.01. So I think there's something to get that last 20, 30, we're gonna have to get comfortable with the fact that there's going to be scenarios that aren't gonna come up. You know, you're going to need to devise ways to get humans involved in the process, and I think you're just going to have to accept that there's going to be process anomalies, right? Because the bots can only handle what the process is set up to do, and if you get something new or different in the process that you can't handle, then there's going to have to be some way to kind of intervene. So I don't think we'll ever get to 100% because you know, oftentimes that's where new policies come from. That's where new processes come from, is there's some new exception to the rule. So I don't know. I don't know if that answered the question, but I love talking about self-driving cars.
All right. With that, I think we'll open it up for questions from the floor, and we'll try to pass the mic around. We're pretty close-knit group, so feel free to stand up, introduce yourself, where you're from, and what your question is, and if there's a particular person you'd like to ask it to. I'm trying to see if we have mics. We're checking? All right. Sorry, I saw your hand, Alan.
I'm Chris Jango. I'm Vice President of Operations for the Scott and White Health Plan. So my role is quite similar to Danny's. So I'm, you know, my organization, we make fairly extensive use of the macros, the core automation. We stop about 1 in 10 healthcare claims for a manual review, and we've got a handful of reasons that the majority of those 10% are stopping that have kind of eluded core automation. And our current macro tools like Foxtrot, which is really just a keyboard macro, have proven not terribly useful in this. So 2 questions. What is the real difference when we talk about Blue Prism or an intelligent automation versus a keyboard macro? And then just a simple question, where y'all are running your bots, are you running them on like a desktop PC, or are you using a virtual client? When we use them, a lot of times we will have to take over 3 PCs that are laying around, and I've got one overlord, right? One human overlord that is watching these bots and waiting for them to fail or to error so that they can be restarted and keep going again.
So I'm going to answer the easy question first. Chevron uses virtual machines for this. We use it in the cloud, the servers, and then we have virtual machines, many of them set up. We actually have 2 reasons for that. One is to free up the PCs that the individual real humans are using. The other is to kind of bypass some of the requirements that Chevron puts on a human's PC, where a bot doesn't necessarily need certain requirements, like to stop working, to relax, you know, the resting times. So the virtual machines are what we're using, and we do have an overlord also that is watching those to make sure they are in compliance, that they're getting updated, et cetera, like all of our regular machines. Do you want to answer the Blue Prism question?
So yeah, and then I'm sure Danny will talk about how they're doing the claims scenario. So Blue Prism, very similar like UiPath. You can run an on-prem virtual network yourself. You can cloud-base it. You can set up however you want. We're not a desktop tool. So when you automate with Blue Prism, you're automating a process. So think of it in that way. We're not going to automate your activities that you do on your desktop. That's what your Foxtrot does. That's the same stuff I did for eons and eons, starting way back with Lotus Notes. Screen scraping, building little fancy macros and things like that with pivot tables and all that cool stuff. And yeah, that's not what these tools are built for, especially UiPath. UiPath is an enterprise-built tool that was built by enterprise architects, but made it such an easy way that you and I can actually go, well, you're smarter than I am, so you could do it very easily. It took me a long time to figure out how to do it in very simple Visio-type diagrams. So from that perspective, it's a simple tool. It's built with objects, so it's an object-oriented tool. It's not, you don't need developers writing with it, any of those types of things, and it's not scripting. So the difference there is that if you want to go change something in your process, you change the object, that object then, wherever it's used, anywhere in your rest of your processes, permeates all of them. A scripting tool can't do that. So if you change this, if change needs to happen, you have to change every single script, just like we'd have to do in Foxtrot. So it's these kinds of things that just differentiate between the tools. But by and large, again, you can set it up and operate however you choose to do it. With Blue Prism, though, it's always going to run, and think of it as, again, as an enterprise solution for you, okay? So Danny will probably want to take it on from how do you do your claims process?
Yeah. Well, I mean, so just we do the virtual machines also, so everything's in the cloud. People log into them, push code and stuff like that. I think to talk about the differentiation around the intelligence, what is intelligent automation, and I mean, I think what's great about Blue Prism is that, we actually can go back and see where the process stopped and broke down. I haven't used any of the other kind of more macro tools, and I'm not sure how that does that, but we can actually go back through and kind of see what the issue was, do root cause on it, and then figure out, okay, what step do we need to change to get, increase the automation. And then I think, the intelligence, like I was talking about earlier, we have, I didn't go too deep into it, but the scenario we're working on is interpreting a note where somebody's actually written, guidance on the next step of the process. And it's not always just like A or B. It's like it's a nurse who writes a note down and says, yeah, I think that we should go ahead and, not apply any of the edits. Okay, good. So it's a yes or no. So we're actually trying to take all those notes, process them, apply natural language processing to them, and create a classifier model that would say, it's either saying we need to make additional steps. So it's going to require humans, very complex instructions. Like, it's a nurse in our clinical review unit, so she's saying, deny this line or apply this to that, or it's nothing needs to be done to just remove the pin code and kind of move on. So it kind of moves through the snake, if you will. So we're trying to get that response where it's a negative response saying nothing needs to be done, just move on. And I think that's really where the intelligence comes in. And with using some of the new capabilities, we could actually be sending that text out in real time to the model, get the response back, and then it could keep processing. Right now, we're having to pre-process it, which is fine, because claims, this isn't real time, right? You got 30 days to pay a claim, so we can actually extract the information out, run a predictive model, get the results, and then feed that to the bot the next day so it can make the decision. So.
Answer your questions? Awesome. Alan, I saw your hand up.
I'm Al Martin with the Texas Department of Information Resources. We're the technology agency for Texas. And basically, in government, for us to get things like this move forward, we talk about proof of concepts and like, you got to have some sort of metrics to work with. To say, okay, how do you make the decision, number one, to do it? Number two, how do you express an ROI? So when we go back to the legislature, the money to be able to get things done in the next 2 years, right? How do we get there? So, just for the panel, how did y'all approach that to take your proof of concept and move forward into what is going to be a true project for your particular company? And that'll maybe help us understand what we should be doing kind of as preliminary work in this area.
Yeah, I mean, my experience was that, you know, our organization actually kind of, they saw this as an opportunity. You know, our CFO is the one who kind of set money aside, you know, to do this, and kind of had I think they got some good marketing materials from, you know, the RPA folks around it. And I will say that our first projects, you know, that initial investment, you know, you're not going to recoup it on your first bot. Like, you put your first bot in, and then it's like, ooh, that was a lot of money just to get, you know, to save a couple FTE, or, you know, and I guess in Lauren's case, they saved a lot their first bot. So probably a better approach. But it was kind of this longer vision that we knew that we would recoup over time, and that there'd be kind of a ramp up to it. So I think our situation was pretty unique in the sense that our organization asked us, you know, to make this investment. So they were kind of getting ahead of the curve, but, you know, we still do have to go justify and make business cases. And there's a lot of really great literature out there about different industries and how automatable they are, and what you should be able to expect in, you know, depending upon if it's a paper process or digital process, stuff like that.
So I think what happened within Chevron is more what you're having to deal with, you know, Chevron being the big government type situation where they're not asking us to go out and look for this new technology. We're seeing it and we're wanting to try and implement it, but we need to prove to them it will actually work. So the way we went about that is using a preferred, an already agreed upon partner. So like Accenture, a consultant that Chevron has already approved. And then they had the licensing, the abilities, the technology, and we were able to do that proof of concept through their ownership of that information. So we didn't have to go get a license with the automation. We didn't have to get a license with any of those things. We were able to use their ownership of that within Chevron to do that proof of concept. And then we delivered that to our leadership and was able to say, okay, you know, doing this project saved us this much money. It only took this much time. And then just look how much we could do with all of these other opportunities. So when you present that up, you will also not only want to include what the results of the proof of concept, you'll also want to present, here are all the other opportunities we've already seen that would fit right into this same type of technology and could utilize the money that you're going to spend within this. And so rather than just saying, look, it worked, you're able to say, you know, we can save you tons of time and money if we can just start down this road, basically.
So from the Blue Prism side, it's pretty straightforward for us. So we're a partner deliver model. That's the way we deliver our product and services for the most part. And so Accenture, of course, is one of our trusted partners. And what we would encourage our folks to do is when we have people who are interested is to work with our partners. They'll do a couple of things for you. One, they'll do assessments. So they'll assess the organization, and as Lauren had said, they're going to look to see, you know, they do heat maps, basically. And they're going in and they're looking around and they're seeing opportunities for where they're going to do things. We try to encourage 1 to 3 pilots. I skip proof of concept. There's nothing to prove. 0. The technology in Blue Prism is 17 years old. It doesn't break. We have 1,000 customers. I don't know what you're proving. A pilot, on the other hand, is something that once it's in place, you can make the decision, go, and you're in production and you're running. A proof oftentimes won't do that. It's too small. So I encourage people to skip the proof of concept. You're proving to the organization it works. I get all that. But it's also a mindset. A pilot is a production-ready process that is now automatable, and you're just saying it's been past all the controls and all the risk standards. So when you make the decision that it's ready to go, you just flip the switch, it's in prod. You're now getting benefits ready to go. So I always try to get people to pick a simple one, a medium one, and a complex one, because that's the real life you're going to deal with. Oftentimes, the partner or the business insists on doing something easy because, oh, we just want to do it easy. We don't get too hard. You guys picked a crazy one. So good on you, right? Because life's not like that. Your organizations aren't like that. And Accenture and others have complexity scales. So they know how to measure the complexity of the processes. But at least if you pick one of each, you'll have an understanding about, wow, we can do low complex processes pretty fast. A medium one is going to take a little bit longer, and a very complex one is going to could take a really long time. But at least you can take the low complex one, flip the switch and prod, and your business will actually see, hey, it works. That you can take upstairs, and I understand how complex it can be getting things approved in the government agencies, but at least they can already see how that's being done. So I have a lot of, time, and we encourage and I spend a lot of time at the federal level. You want to know how complex it is? I sat with a group of people trying to write a paper for our dear president so they have a policy paper now at the federal level for RPA. So even our president is talking about robots. I don't know if that's good or bad, by the way. Maybe we can get one that stops him from tweeting would be awesome.
The one thing I will add to that is I think starting out with pilots is important. Alan, I think you were there when you asked the question. But what Lauren said, just in terms of doing the process assessment when you're going to get the funding, is absolutely important. At Accenture, I mentioned how we're digitally led, and oftentimes we invest in specific areas where we're trying new things out. And we've invested in many cases with some of our clients to go do these pilots. And then the conversation goes to, yeah, the technology works. We kind of understand what we have to do now, and that was helpful, but what's the so what? If you have this backlog of opportunities where you've assessed, in different pockets of whatever organization you're trying to solve for, it makes the conversation a lot easier with forecasted, ROI and what that may look like. It may be a high-level swag, but it helps you get in the ballpark. And so I would say I learned that the hard way in a few cases where we've made some few investments, but I think it's been better for the journey of understanding how to go about it, and it helps other organizations out as well. So I think I saw a hand here. And Sarah, I see you have a really cool box. Yeah. I'm not sure what it does. Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay. Hi, Joel Lindsay with Avanade. Lauren, just going back to your question about change management. When you guys started, obviously eliminating FTEs was not the objective, but that has now happened. So now how do you get your shared services organization to adopt automation when they actually are seeing the jobs eliminated?
So the space that I'm in is a unique space within Chevron where we are the hiring point for the organization for finance. And so we went from 77 people was who owned the process when we started. We're down to 64 now. But no one who's actually doing the process felt the change, I guess is a good way to put that. So we've just used natural attrition. So people who retired, people who were resigning, not necessarily anything to do with the bot. Whenever those people left, where in the past we had just backfill those positions, we're just now letting the position be combined, eliminating that space. And so where the people who are still doing the jobs are not seeing the reductions, we as an organization are able to gain those efficiencies.
I was just going to say, we're similar strategy, but I think it's actually kind of curious if Lauren or if you guys have measured this yet, but one of the things that we have been thinking about too is, the bots are more consistent than people, right? And what we suspect that the quality's gone up. So have you guys seen any results in you had a big mega process that's really measurable? We're doing like little processes, so we haven't seen like huge quality gains, but just curious if you've seen any.
Absolutely. Actually, out of those 77 people, they are all doing the same process. That process took them 5 days for each one of those humans. Once we started standardizing the process and rolling out a standard template, you're using the same formulas, you're plugging in numbers in the same places, it was astounding how many times people were redoing their work during that 5-day period. Leadership had no idea. Leadership had no idea that when this process that we're going to go in, that these people were actually running it the first time, going back, seeing the problems, fixing it, running it. And it just was like, why are you not telling anyone that this is not working for you? And so it's been quite enlightening to see that with the bot, we can do it right the first time. We can put the numbers in, process it, and run it, and it's right. And nobody's having to redo the work. We're even running statistics. That's another thing that slowed us down, is starting to run statistics, making sure that people are using it. Another interesting thing is some people don't tell us they're processing stuff. And so we're finding that leadership's like, are you 100% implemented? Well, we thought we were because everyone told us what they were doing, but now we're still seeing places where those people really like to type in numbers. So we're seeing places where they are still doing it. We're having to root that out, get it in, just that change management of just people understanding this. within Chevron, I know that you were talking about how it's not a tool. Within Chevron, we're using it as a tool. We're using it as a smart tool for them to do their jobs better. And so just making sure they understand that it's supposed to help them. And in the areas within our organization that we aren't using this bot, that those groups that are not impacted, they've started to see the results within their peers. And so we've had them come to us and ask for help. And we're able to, change management wise, it's easier whenever they're asking. And so we're able to give them a quick win or, you know, save them a week's worth of time. And so it helps us move into those areas whenever they come and say, hey, can you help us? And we're able to. That really, I would say change management wise, I would hopefully work with people who are asking for it, but you don't always get that benefit.
So I'll give you a little change management story, and then about what happens when people are let go, and because you're in an organization or you're in a particular part of the country where natural attrition doesn't naturally absorb them, and also a little bit about where quality actually gets better. So Bank of New York Mellon is the largest processor of U.S. denominated payments in the world. Between 2 and $3 trillion of U.S. denominated payments will go out every single day. That's processed in 2 locations, approximately 3 sometimes in the world. One of them is in a little town called Oriskany, New York. You can't find it. And especially about now, it's probably buried in snow, but it's about 30 minutes south of Syracuse, New York. So there's a processing center there, and that processing center went through our education program. We were educating the entire workforce about digital workers, RPA, and all those kind of things. And just to give you a little bit about, we measure people's digital IQ there as well, and their digital IQ was kind of low, to the point where one of the senior managers said, John, I get all this stuff, but I got one question for you. And I said, what's that? They said, so you know, when during a disaster recovery, how you all move those bots? So being a bit of a sarcastic ass that I am, I said, well, we've got 4 of the biggest guys here. We've given a Penske truck contract to them with some dollies, and they just wheel them out, take them over to the DR site. And they thought that was a really good answer, even though we'd probably only told them during the 4-hour boot camp that it's software. This team, by the way, was part of this payments process. And we were going to do a big install where we were putting Alex in to sit side by side with him virtually to do payments. We had a huge change management problem, as you can imagine, and so we decided that maybe what we should do is try gamification, because they didn't trust Alex. So what we did is my RPA lead said, what if we pay them to catch every mistake that Alex makes when we go what we call live proofing. Live proofing is a concept we use, which is when you go to prod, because in most environments, your test environments don't look anything like your production environments. So your guys will model, build, and then they put it into prod and the thing crashes because it looks nothing like what they just built in. All you're going like this, going, yeah, that's my company too. So we're actually testing a new environment, it's like screw building it in the dev environment. We're just gonna build it in prod. And then all your control and risk guys go, you can't do that, you can't do that. We're doing it anyway. So when we put them in, they run it, and we told people for a week, we want you to track every mistake that Alex makes, because when you go into live proofing, you keep all the humans in the loop. And so they were tracking every transaction that Alex was doing. So the first day, we got like 5 or 6 mistakes, and the guys are telling me about this, and I'm like, what? You guys are terrible modelers. And then Wednesday comes around, it was like 3 days in, and we had like one legal yellow page full of mistakes that Alex had made. By Friday, when I had to have the meeting with the senior manager, who didn't really want us in there anyway, and her 2 supervisors, we had 2 pages full. So we had her on a VC, and we're giving her the report, and it got very quiet, and I'm like, oh hell, what's going on? I'm like, Jessica, I'm really sorry. And she said, John, these aren't mistakes. Alex did them all right. My people on the floor don't know what their jobs are. And we all, myself and the head of the RPA, we both sat there and we're like, and Mark is typing me a note, you're the psychologist, what are we gonna do? And I said, well, this is a learning moment. And I said, Jessica, we gotta use this to help your folks understand that Alex now is their best friend, that Alex can actually help them. learn and not make mistakes. So we actually used Alex to take over 4i checks. So Alex not only became a worker, but Alex became the people that also did 4i checks. So it's part of this digital workforce can be very, very powerful to help learn and help teach, but also can take over controls that people don't really think about. And you also can use cool things like gamification to help people feel more comfortable with things. Because people are scared. You know, it's just the unknown, right? And they do worry about, you know, and sometimes attrition is okay, but oftentimes in these little communities where we have offices and stuff, there's no place for them to go, and you can't upgrade their skills because they don't have that, they don't have the digital IQ and the aptitude. There's no other jobs for them to go to. They've been back office processing for years and years and years, and that's all they're capable of doing. These jobs are moving away. So it's interesting to think about that. And just closing note, when I built the RPA team, half of my workforce came out of that, who were modelers, came out of that little site in Oriskany, New York. I felt so close to that team, I built my RPA COE in Oriskany, New York. And most of my team were operators, guys in the back office. So anybody can learn how to use these things and actually do it. And they're awesome, by the way. But it is, change management is so key with this stuff. It's unbelievable what you have to do.
Good discussion. Other questions? We have time? Yes.
Hey guys, I'm Steve, representing one of the startups here at Capital Factory, Kung Fu AI. We're on the services side of artificial intelligence. So my question, a little bit self-serving on the services side. We've talked a little bit about products, SaaS, Blue Prism, et cetera. Are you all, especially on the intelligent automation side, how do you, in your roles in your organizations, view services providers, so consultancies, places that can build custom things for you? So simple question is, do you look to outside expertise? If so, how do you evaluate them, and who have you seen in this space that's been particularly impressive?
Well, I think we're relatively, you know, new to the space. We have worked with outside AI teams. I think I'm trying. I always get their name wrong. They're in Berkeley. Cogitativo, I think, is their name. I don't know if you. So I don't know if they're a name within the industry, and you know, typically we do an engagement. You know, we kind of tell them what we're looking to do, and kind of set up a project. I think for us, you know, it's a good learning opportunity because it is like, you know, what my team, you know, I have a lot of people who are very interested in, been doing analytics for a long time or programming, and they're interested in gaining the skill. And we're working on kind of building a team internally as well, just for, you know, economics perspective. But, you know, I think what we look for really, I mean, what it comes down to, I mean, I hate, it sounds crass, but it's like it gets down to cost, I think, is a lot of it. You know, and then also just obviously the working relationship with the, you know, with the company and how you feel about them. So, but we're always open. It is difficult. I mean, I can tell you that engagement with them took a really, really long time to get going because they wanted our data hosted within their own system. So the more you can leave the data on the client side, or if the client already has their data in like the cloud, obviously you can work with it. And we are moving more to, you know, storing our data in the cloud, so it's a little probably easier to kind of hook into things. But yeah, I think it took us like 6 months to get them cleared from a technology risk assessment perspective and having to go in. So, but once that initial barrier is done, it's very easy then for other people within Kaiser now to work with them. You know, we're a large organization, so we've kind of made those inroads. So there's probably some investment up front that has to be made in terms of doing that, and obviously, you know, vendors will kind of absorb that cost in hope of, you know, that technology risk part. They'll, you know, take care of that in hopes of additional business. So, does that help, or any other follow on?
I think you hit all three.
Okay, cool.
Any other questions? Here. I think that might just throw a box. I'll throw it to you. You can just do it. I was waiting for you to do it.
Hi, my name is Nikki, and then I'm from KX, and then thank you for grabbing my mic. So yeah, I was wondering like if there's any data challenges for doing all the and artificial intelligent things and then automation things, because it seems like there's gonna be a lot of ingestions of like different kind of datas, and then I wonder how you guys manage it or like deal with the latencies and some problems.
I'll take the first crack. Most of the, if you're in the BFSI community, which is banks, financial services, and insurance companies, the great news is we have crap data because it's old and it's unstructured. So it is, and as much as they're moving, we've all had digital strategies. We're building lakes, ponds, oceans, stream, mud puddles. And those things being built for like 1,000 years, I think, since whoever came up with that term. They're trying to digitize all this stuff. And if we waited around for them to digitize all the data, we wouldn't change anything. And we're already slow at changing things in that market, those BFSI communities. One of the things that we found is if you didn't start your business in the last couple of weeks in a garage, your data is pretty bad, right? Because it's not clean, it's unstructured, or semi-structured at best. So you're right. There's a lot of data that is there, and if the older your industry is, and if you didn't bring about a lot of very high standards for the ingestion of client data, it's a mess. It's an absolute mess.
I understand.
So from at least what we have seen when we deal with our clients from the Blue Prism side, their struggles are the same that Lauren's looking at now and others. It's you can't use the automation tools, the basic ones like RPA. If you try to take it just as is, you have to move up the scale more towards the AI tools or IA tools that can handle unstructured data. The problem with that is it takes a long time for those tools to learn the patterns within that unstructured data to be able to make sense out of it. So it's kind of the chicken and the egg. What do you want to do with it? So we tackled it in the simplest way, which is we knew the processes that we needed to automate. We brought in the data capturing tool that we needed to structure that data for that process instead of waiting for, well, let's build the big lake and get all this stuff done. And that would take forever and ever and ever. And we also, they're doing that, and a lot of companies will do that. But at the same time, you're trying to make things better for your customers. And so you try to tackle it both at the top level and at the practical day-to-day level. At least was my experience and what we're trying to encourage folks to do. You guys?
I mean, do you have any?
No, we pretty much have the same story that John covered.
I would say the only thing maybe I'd add, and I don't know if this is true in banking, but in insurance, our big data challenge is just there's multiple systems. Not everything is in one, which is what's great about RPA is they can go traverse 5 or 6 different systems. But yeah, a lot of our processes and some of our systems are very old mainframes, so you actually have to pull out the old, like, what is an A2 or 3 and all this. To me, it looks like hieroglyphics. I'm sure it meant something to somebody, but so you have to find people to translate that data to, or even data sometimes is people get creative in our older systems about how they stored data. So they actually would, there'd be just a miscellaneous field, and it was like the 8th digit meant this, and the 9th digit meant that. So there's a lot of interesting stuff and workarounds when the cost of data storage was a lot more expensive. And that's, I think, for us is made it difficult. And then obviously, we have multiple regions, and sometimes we have different systems in different regions. It's pretty common in health plans to have multiple claim systems, multiple membership systems, et cetera. So.
Thank you.
All right. I know we're at our time, so first of all, I wanted to thank all of you for coming, and hopefully this was a good conversation. Please feel free to come meet us after and have conversations if you have additional questions. Danny, Lauren, John, thank you so much for being here. Really appreciate it, and taking the time out of your day to share your journey and story. And once again, thanks to the Capital Factory, Blue Prism for breakfast. There's still a lot of food, so please feel free to grab some on the way out. And thank you all for being here.
There has to be a thing. Yeah, it's really fun. It's like, it's great after panels too, because it kind of livens up the room.
Yeah, yeah.